Coach Silverfield.
Hey guys, appreciate y'all joining us this afternoon. Obviously, a lot of excitement for the University of Memphis football program about playing in the Easy Post Hawaii Bowl. Obviously, the nature of the bowl game, the opportunity to play in such a wonderful event. We're excited not only about traveling to a great place in this great country, but also the opportunity to play a great opponent in the University of Hawaii. Got a lot of respect for Coach Todd Graham. As many of you guys know, I actually was with him briefly at Arizona State before joining the Detroit Lions. And then obviously from Detroit here, and then this is where I've been since. So I've got a lot of familiarity with him. Obviously, he does an excellent job and always has been a fantastic coach. He's got great staff. It's a Hawaii team that, won their last two games. And those teams that usually end hot are playing well into their bowl games. They've got a lot of production. They had 9 players on different types of Mountain West teams. And, we know that their defense, I believe, is number 3 in the country in takeaways. And we've had the trouble turning the ball over. So we got a lot of things to work on to get better at. We've, had real quick brief practices these last 2 days in and out, but mostly with no focus on Hawaii. We're going to be on the road for one more week and then really start to get back after it the following Monday. So about 8 days out from turning our focus to our opponent. Looking forward to the travel and all the things that come with such a wonderful bowl game. But we know we got a tough task at hand, but excited about what's ahead of us.
Harry and then Frank.
How you doing, Coach?
Good. How are you?
Hey, Coach, I know, the regular season over with and you have focused on the bowl. But when do you start focusing on preparing for next year? Because I know you use the bowl game as a stepping stone to next year. But when do you start making your plans adjustments for, evaluation of talent and coaching staff and all that?
Every single day. and that, Terry, that's not coach speak. I mean, I really think, obviously we're on the road recruiting for next year, looking at all different types of players. We know this recruiting cycle and the way we're going things, the direction of college football. It's not just me showing up at high schools anymore. It's, find ourselves all over the country. And, constantly evaluating our coaching staff. I won't make any decisions on anything of that matter until after the bowl game. We've also got signing day coming up on the 15th, the early signing day, which I think is now the main signing day, obviously, given the nature of everything, constantly evaluating our current players. I'll be able to sit down like I did last year, and I'll continue to at some point when we get back off the road recruiting in that week that we're in town before we leave and meet with every player individually. I'm going to try my best to. Now that takes quite a while, and I also want to focus on game planning, but our current roster is the most important thing. But, constantly doing evaluation, given the way it is with this early sign day. It used to be when you played a bowl game, you'd be able to get 2 weeks of a lot of young guy practices and getting after it and beating each other up. Well, that's not necessarily the case anymore. We'll get a little bit of extra work with them, but really we're only going to get that 1 week of work before heading off to Hawaii. So the preparation, I'm constantly watching film and studying guys, not just watching one position at practice, making my evaluations. But it's an ever-changing deal, right? Roster management, as we've talked about, is part of it now more than ever. It's interesting, Terry. I was on the road recruiting and running into other head coaches, and it's the same thing. Everybody's, they don't know who's going to go in the transfer portal that day for their own team or for somebody else, where their travels may take them, which super seniors which players may have the ability to come back for an extra year, which players, so we're constantly juggling all that, but it's where we're at and we got to handle it. But yeah, so long-winded answer to your question. It's an everyday evaluation and movement forward towards next year.
Frank and then Evan.
Ryan, how do you gauge, and not just Calvin Austin, but, players who are dealing with injuries, through the season? What's the conversation, about this game, whether they're going to play or not play or so on?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to make sure they're 100% healthy. I mean, we got a guy like JJ Russell that's played a lot of football, right? And played a lot of snaps this year. Jacoby Francis, Calvin Austin has been dealing with the ankle, but we have those conversations, and a lot of them, right? We could say, hey, this is what we're thinking right now. And obviously that could change, but, I'm going to, leave that, as a personal discussion that I've had with some of our players, whether or not they plan to play in the bowl game, and probably ongoing conversations as well, whether it's, if Seth Hennigan's fully healthy, right? I mean, can't forget that he's been banged up, whether it's certain guys, that are dealing with other things. I mean, but yeah, I know you were asking about those guys that played a lot of football, whether they'll play. We do talk about it. And I also get opinions of other people. I think that's important, right? Whether it's, hey, if the guy's an NFL prospect, what's best for them, and if the player's healthy, that's the first and foremost thing. And then, okay, what do other people suggest that, are decision makers maybe at the next level? Obviously, I've been fortunate, and people, I feel comfortable that most of our players trust my opinion, and I'm always honest, and feel what's best their interest, not necessarily the best interest of winning a football game. And we have those discussions, and pretty open and pretty candid. And I appreciate our players' respect that way.
Now, obviously, the goal is to go down there and handle business against Hawaii, but, it's not every day, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old players get to travel to Hawaii for free. Are you going to, kind of let them embrace being in Hawaii a little bit?
I'll take a deep breath when I say that, because bowl games are fun for everybody but the head coach. They're fun for administrators. They're fun for players. They're fun. The coaching staff is, you're babysitting on full force. Now you're doing it in Hawaii. And now, look, we understand the nature of this trip. This is a little bit different than, heading somewhere that we've been fortunate to go to in other places. But this is a unique trip, and very excited for that opportunity. I've never been most of our team hasn't been, to go to a beautiful place that obviously offers things that we're not able to just do in our backyard. So we will let them enjoy it, but there is, they understand that there's a task at hand. So we're going to practice hard. We're going to do everything in our power to put together a great game plan and keep those guys focused. We will let them enjoy it. There's going to be some great bowl events that we're looking forward to as well. And even leading up to it, we'll do things for them here back at home base. But, it's part of it. They deserve it. It's been an up and down year. I'll be the first to admit, right? Not necessarily exactly how we all planned or hoped, but they deserve this. I want them to enjoy it, but we also have to have great focus when we're out there and make sure that we're doing things, being professionals at all times.
Yeah, what would it mean for, I know you guys had an emotional win to end the regular season with the win against Tulane, but for your seniors to leave out with another bowl win? Yeah,
and we just finished up a quick practice, and I said, being able to that opportunity, that's the ultimate goal, is to hoist that trophy. And I think anytime, right, first off, half the teams in the country, just under half don't get to go to bowl games now. And then you talk about the, only a quarter of teams in college football get to hoist a trophy when it's all said and done, because we know the nature of it. And that's such a different feeling when you can end the season, and for our seniors to end holding a trophy up and being bowl champions. Plus for this program, right? If I can recall, I don't believe there's ever been a team that's won back-to-back bowl games, and those seniors deserve it. I think that's something to be able to put on a feather in their cap.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yes, sir.
Evan.
Sorry. Ryan, a couple things for me. One, as you're discussing with players, kind of, the whole process about just, whether to play or not, and they come to you. Obviously, you've been through this before with guys who haven't played in bowl games, but just kind of what advice can you sort of give just from your experience, speaking with NFL personnel, obviously with your coaching background?
Yeah, Evan, first, if there's ever a health issue, I want to make sure that they're 100% healthy, right? And then whatever it is, that it wouldn't have a further factor to hurt their training for the NFL. Then I also think it's important to get feedback. Okay, hey, where do we see this guy fall in line? Is he's a no-brainer first-round pick? How does that affect their deal, right? We know a lot of guys that are guaranteed, top 10 picks. Well, there's such a thing as guarantee, and they still play their bowl game. So it's a discussion I'll have with them, their families. Also the idea of, okay, does it help or hurt them? Because, Evan, the biggest thing is that if a guy's not necessarily a first or second round pick, the very first question they'll get asked is, why didn't you play in the bowl game? And that's, I've been in those rooms. I asked the same thing because, well, why didn't you play in the bowl game? And if it's a legitimate reason, sure. But that's just the way it is. And so there's all those things. I'll factor that in. I've been fortunate to have relationships with, coaches and general managers in the NFL and scouts, and kind of get their feedback on it. And, sometimes if they say, hey, it has no effect on their draft status, or if they say, hey, some of these general managers prefer, it's, the age-old question, are we going to take an opt-out guy or a guy that didn't, and a lot of that's how they weigh certain things. But I'll constantly ask those hard questions of those people involved in this. And when I sit down with the families or have those discussions, whether it be face-to-face with a prospect or, just discussing certain things, what do they need? What are they looking for? And if it makes sense, and if it does make sense for them to play, I encourage it because ultimately that may be better for the team. But if it doesn't, and it could hinder them or it doesn't matter in their draft stats, it all depends. Ultimately, I still believe in the team game and doing everything we can for the team. But all those discussions, we throw out every variety of topic out there.
All right. Second question for me. I know since we probably won't talk to you until signing day next week or on the 15th. So I'm just kind of curious, what's it like, one, how are things different this year? I know last year things were tricky because of obviously guys coming back, the extra year in there. Now you guys haven't had this for year two. So what's different about, roster management, tightening up this class? What's more different about this, this process now than say a year ago?
Well, a year ago, we weren't allowed to leave, right? COVID. I mean, we weren't able to, COVID restrictions. So it's a totally different deal. I mean, we're first time able to step foot in a high school and sit down and shake hands with a high school coach. It's quite a different deal. I mean, with the way all this works, I mean, we had prospects that showed up in January. They'd never seen us face to face and shook a hand. They had these conversations. So it's a totally different deal. And then with the roster management, right? I've got to sit there and say, okay, is player X coming back? Well, if he is, then guess what? I can't bring this guy or I can't sign him on December 15th because I've got this spot already filled for a guy. So I have to have those conversations. And look, there's no guarantee of anything. And yeah, I kind of mentioned this, which I think is unique. And I think it's really important that everybody understands this. The NCAA allowed it a +7. So if you lose 7 players to transfer to the NFL, you're allowed to add 7 additional players. So if you look at the 25 initial, +7, that allows 32 signees if you had done it, depending on how many initials you lost the year before, all that stuff. So reality, what we're seeing, and it's technically not right, but I've talked to college coaches that are going and cutting guys off their roster that are either low character, low GPA, not good enough, because if you lose 7, you can go add 7. And everybody thinks they can go find 7 better players in free agency than maybe the 7 that's part of it. And that's where we're at with this whole deal. And it's tricky. It's quite different. It's interesting. But that's where we are. I could wake up tomorrow and a player Q could go in the transfer portal. And now I said, well, now I need this position and I got to hurry up and go on the road and change my plans. Instead of Wednesday being in this city, I've got to change and go find this player here. So it's quite different. Look, I'm not complaining. I love my job, but it's changed dramatically. And when I say the job's changed tremendously since I took this job, just over almost just over 2 years ago, it has. And, in fact, I had the good fortune of running into Coach Norvell, and we were both laughing about like, man, who would have ever thought our first month on the job would have been the easiest? And now it's completely changed in a different direction and the way we got to do certain things. And that's the sentiment of all coaches. But I've constantly keep a roster on me, constantly looking at scholarship numbers, the transfer portals live and well, as you guys have seen. I don't want to, I'm sure some of you guys will know better. Brian probably knows better than all of us, but I believe there's over 1,600 kids that are in it right now, and as we speak, there's probably somebody that's gone in the last 15 minutes. So constantly aware of that. And it's a different deal for sure.
So for you guys specifically though, with these last days of recruiting, just kind of how important is it for you guys as you're going out now recruiting these last 2 weeks? How important is it to kind of just either shore up this class, or are you still kind of just, are you still evaluating players literally up to signing day at this point?
Yeah, I mean, you want to secure the ones you have, obviously, that's part of it. And, what ends up happening is a lot of these rosters, if I'm at a quote unquote top 10 school in the country, well, I'll see who's committed to Memphis. And I may say, oh, that must be a good player because they usually do a good job evaluating. And they may go and try to look at one of our guys. And that's part of it. We know that. There's also guys that sometimes that we'll bring on campus and say, now had the chance to sit in somebody's living room, Evan, and say, ooh, maybe this guy's not the right fit. And we always say it, like, right, when a young man decommits, well, we always just assume it's the breakup occurred by that person. And maybe it's a school that's not interested in the guy because of a character issue, or they had something they met, or they didn't enjoy being around them. So it goes both ways. So we're constantly evaluating our guys and, the recruits, and it's a different deal, but we have to keep it right. Because if a guy goes in the portal on Thursday, I'm going to do everything in my ability to bring him on an official visit that Friday. And it's all the way up until December 15th. And then guess what? Guy continue to recruit December 16th without signing funny. It's, that just, you got to constantly recruiting. It's an everyday deal. And that's not coach speak. It's just a reality.
Thanks.
Brian and then Terry.
Question on recruiting as well. with the as many people are transferring, sometimes you'll have a kid that was at school A transferred to school B. Now they're in the portal again. Is it still a rule where they can still transfer to school C and play right away, or would they have to sit out a year?
They would have to sit out a year unless they're a grad transfer. So
Gotcha.
at least as far as it was, the ruling was this morning. Now, I think that one of the reasons was so they could stop with all the waivers. So guys just couldn't transfer from school to school. Now, that's what it's supposed to be. Who the heck knows?
Terry?
Hey, Coach, I got a couple questions. First, anybody with new scholarships that's on the roster for his walk-ons?
Yeah, so right now I'm not going to put in on part of it with this roster management is I don't know where our numbers are, and so I really believe, Terry, to be frank with you, that most of our new scholarships will probably come in the summer because then the dust settles a little bit. And just so you guys know, starting May 1st, anybody that transfers after that, it has to sit for a year. So even if it's a one-time transfer. So that's maybe when I'll have an understanding of what my roster looks like. I mean, it was up until, you're holding your breath all the way through training camp and it still could happen. But so that's, to answer that question, I think I'll have a better understanding where our roster numbers at. If we're at 82 scholarships, well, that would be great because then I can have the ability to go put a couple guys that are currently on our roster that've been there for a year on scholarship.
And secondly, with Cincinnati being in the Final Four, how are you using that as a encouragement to look, you come play for Memphis, our conference has a school in the Final Four, you have a legitimate chance of going and playing Final Four?
Yeah, I think the narrative of the P5 and all that stuff, we've been able to fight that pretty well, because I think people understand the level of competition. They've seen what Cincinnati's been able to do. They saw what we were able to do at one time, what, even us beating an SEC opponent, I think. But yeah, that certainly helps the cause. Look, I'm pulling for Cincinnati. Congratulations, Coach Fickle and his group. They've done it the right way, and I hope they make a run at this thing because they certainly deserve it. But all it does is just further show how tough our conference is and how good it is.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Coach Silverfield.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.